All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Hello, everyone. I love a post-joint presidential address show, and that's what we have. There is no feeling like the kind of feeling of seeing your Lord and Savior, Donald Trump, speaking to the masses as he is, playing the hits as he did. You know, it's never been worse than it was when I got it. It's never been better since I got here. And then you fill in all of the colorful details along the way. We will help you in that charge. John Rothmann, the great historian and our former colleague at KGO, joins us bottom of the hour. And let me just disabuse you of one notion. Yes, we'll be talking a lot about Trump and his State of the Union. I guess it wasn't called a State of the Union technically, but his joint session of Congress address and all of the different aspects of it. And I think one of the aspects is something we've talked a lot on the show about, and that is the privatization of Social Security, or the elimination, really, of the public program, Social Security. If you didn't get the idea that that's on the table, then you didn't watch the same speech I did. But beyond that, I have news that's not Trump-related. We have the good doctor. Dr. Michael Daigneault is going to be here because now that we have the robust leadership that we do at the NIH and CDC, the nation's health is in the responsible hands of RFK Jr., who's going to get us off the sugar and get us off the McDonald's and the fast food and get us off those cumbersome vaccines that save us from all those fatal illnesses. I mean, now that we have him there, we maybe once in a while then shine a spotlight now with a little more interest than we used to on medicine and on the spread of bird flu, which appears to be gaining momentum, this mystery virus on the continent of Africa, which appears to be gaining momentum, and also, of course, the measles outbreak, which started in Texas, now is in New Jersey, and seems to be gaining momentum. So couldn't happen at a better time that we get this incredibly rigorous review of how effective the vaccine program is from a guy like RFK Jr. I will introduce you to our crew. You know Kim.
Kim, how are you?
She is our stalwart news person. Occasionally, we even have time for her news on this show. But she is, yeah, she's a chitter. I'll tell you that. She likes to chit, and then she chits again, and then she adds another chit, and you've got, before you know it, yeah. And Matt is here. He's the newest member of our crew. And he was dropped into, it was supposed to be like a training period, and sort of a smooth segue into the producer's chair, so that when Albert went away, he's in Japan right now, Albert is, that Matt could, slide in, having been briefed and ridden shotgun with Albert on all the shows. Instead, Albert gave him about 10 hours of training because he sat in on one show, and then Albert had to jam. And now Matt's like, oh, wait a minute. I don't even know where anything is. So, but he's really been great. And
quick on the uptake, that Matt. Yeah,
he is.
Nice.
Yeah, he's really gotten it together. I saw early on already in the chat that people seem to be, already speaking out about what we saw last night and what's happening in government. David Akers says, looking forward to your take on last night's address produced by Trump Media, Inc. Chose not to watch. Only thing Trump hates more than bad news is a low audience turnout.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the ratings. I'm sure that Kim can get them. I mean, I'm sure it's very well watched, But
Google it.
Yeah, I'm sure it's out there. But look, it was, if you did miss it, and thank you, David Akers, for that $10 super chat. It was, if I had to say it in summary, I would say it was classic Trump, filled with grievance about the 2020 election being stolen. That is Al Green you're seeing. There were some pushback moments, and I'll spend it just because we're starting with that video. There you see Melania and the crew, and I'll speak to those pushback moments in a second. But if you missed it, it was just and we'll play you some highlights, obviously. But it was really, I don't mean to say that he's playing the hits as a catch-all, but that really is kind of what he does. Trump 2.0 is the same Trump we had the last time, only he's now really got control of government, and he is putting the powers of dismantling government, because government is a hateful thing that has been handled poorly by the Democrats. He's put the keys to all of that in the hands of Elon Musk, who was recognized last night. And yet what you really get there in the, while Trump enriches himself legally, let him know 51% did not vote for him, says D.O. Wong. And the percentage will grow wanting him out of office. He thinks he can scare us and the rest of the world. Well, thank you, D.O. Wong, for that thought. I'll tell you, he has scared me, and he has scared the rest of the world. You know, then I want to get back to the speech, but I'll just make this one comment because you mentioned the rest of the world. The world is, and this is, I think, something we talk about occasionally on the show, Americans have gotten fat and happy. That's the problem here. We've gotten fat and happy, and we just, you know, don't understand how democracy is a fragile thing. And we don't understand how relationships worldwide, the geopolitical structure, is a fragile thing. Flawed though it may be, its fragility is really going to be made clear in the next 4 years. Because you have this president who, like syphilitic king.
I'll ding you for that.
Yeah, from medieval times, doubles down on this new alliance with Russia and with the Russian punch list points. And it's an absolute affront to this fragility that I'm talking about. You have a structure in, and again, I'm just talking about this because you mentioned the world. You have a structure in Europe that was formed post-World War II. And the way in which peace has been kept in that post-World War II Europe is by forging alliances. Again, these were formed in the shadow of an awful, horrifying, endless war. I mean, World War I was that, and then World War II, involved the additional atrocities of the Holocaust, etc. And you had this, in Hitler, this guy who wanted to really literally take over the world. So more to the point, the fragility that I'm talking about is really dependent on being kept together because of America's involvement. America is a really strong partner to these European allies in terms of keeping things quiet. It really, frankly, I think American involvement is the only thing that's keeping Russian expansion from continuing. And so this Ukraine moment is an inflection moment in the history of the world. And in the modern history of the world, I don't think Americans really have a sense for how fragile everything is. I don't think they had a sense for how fragile the democracy was and is. I don't think they had a sense for what government really does. I think they had no sense of the NATO alliance. We don't need it anymore. How come we're paying a disproportionate amount? And by the way, you can say that Trump is right, that we do pay a disproportionate amount, that others should pay more. I mean, Germany perhaps among them, because Germany, I think, has, maybe not paid enough, if you will, I mean, as a partner in all this. But again, that's sort of moving the chess pieces on a board that we already know sort of the end game of. I'd say what's happened now is, because of this general amnesia, or I don't know if it's a lack of desire on the part of Americans to know what's going on, kind of low information participants in our political process, we end up with what we have now, which is a guy who speaks really well on camera. I mean, he's not articulate like Obama was. He's not an orator like Obama was, but he speaks very well and effectively, and he plays the media moments. Now, if you know his tricks, if you know how he works off prompter, how he gets into a prompter cadence, then he gets onto like an ad lib cadence, then he throws in never seen anything like it, we've never had anything like it before, then he throws in a completely made up fact, of which there were a huge number last night, then you kind of see through his artifice. But he is a performer, and so he drinks in these moments. And apparently America was ready for a performer who is smack talking the libs, and the libs, to be fair, embrace stuff that America was having trouble really choking down anymore. I mean, they made, I've made this point before, but it's incredible to think that they've made such a big deal out of this trans thing. And I've gotten an email or two when I mention this saying, hey, you know, you may not think this is a serious thing, but my child plays soccer in Marin County up in Northern California, and a kid who identified as a girl is playing, and he grew up as a boy, and my child is the goalie. I might have read the email on the air. I don't know if I did, Kim. And anyway,
I don't remember.
Yeah, so I don't mean to diminish it too much. And he was saying, and that child just kicks so much harder, and it's actually very dangerous. I'm not saying that's not an issue, but it's not the issue. I mean, what happened with the Trump administration, and then I will get to highlights or whatever you want to call it from last night. We'll play you some cuts and I'll give you some thoughts. But whatever you want to say about that issue, I mean, its legitimacy, okay. I will grant it as a legitimate conversation. It's an intriguing conversation. It's very much of the moment. But it's not the issue confronting America. I mean, you've got a president who is pulling out of the support for Ukraine. He's now announced, in addition to no more money, no more weaponry for Ukraine, that he's not going to share intelligence with Ukraine, U.S. intelligence.
I think
yeah.
You make a point that I think most Americans don't get, that giving money and aid to Ukraine isn't just for Ukraine. It's for us too. It's for Europe. It's for the world, the way the world is ordered right now, right? It's not just for us. So when the GOP expects Zelensky to come crawling on his hands and knees in gratitude to the Oval Office with a million thank yous, I mean, we should be thanking him for mounting this fight as well. We're partners in this. And to change horses midstream, or whatever the saying is, it's dangerous and it's scary. You're absolutely right. And it's not just us helping Ukraine. It's us helping the world.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And by the way, just on Zelensky, he was gracious and thankful. I remember when the day after I played you the stuff where the whole beginning of his remarks filled with thanks. It's just that J.D. Vance played that moment, made it sound as though he didn't actually say thank you. And then that reporter who was a plant, I guess it's Marjorie Taylor Greene's boyfriend, who asked, how come you're not wearing a suit? It was sort of like these cheap shots, about thanks and why aren't you, what do you,
it doesn't matter. He could be belligerent. We still need him to win.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter whether he says thank you. He turns out that he did say it, and he is a nice guy and whatever. But we don't need him to be all of that. We just need him to win.
And then when you get the MAGA Mars of the world, MAGA Mars says, oh, please, the narratives of stopping future threats by policing, decades old, MAGA. Yeah. Well, all I would say to you is if you really believe that, if you don't see the fragility of things and you don't see America's role in kind of keeping a lid on it all, then I think you're not well enough informed. I'll put it that way. I'm not going to call you a name or anything. That's just not who I am. But I really feel as though you've lost the plot. It's really easy to lose the plot, frankly, MAGA Mars. I'm not blaming you for losing the plot. I mean, I'm sure you're distracted with a lot of stuff. You're busy, owning the libs, and you don't, just regurgitating what other MAGA crap they've given you. If you're watching on Fox News Channel, et cetera, you have no sense of the world and its fragility. But it is a fragile thing, and you're going to see how fragile it is, sadly, because we're turning tail on the European continent, and we're going to pay a price for it. I mean, this isolationism You heard Timothy Snyder talking about it. I mean, he is a brilliant historian, and he told you this isolationism, it's not a winner for the isolationist country. It's a loser. America's influence on the world is a powerful thing, and most of that influence is soft power. It's investment in many of these programs that are involved in keeping the world healthy, keeping the world fed. And now you're going to see, we already are having it in Africa. You have a rogue illness. We don't know what it is. Well, soon you're going to have a bunch of illnesses. We do know what they are, but we pulled all the money for the inoculations for those communities and villages. It will all be revisited on America. It's really not a pretty picture, but I understand. MAGA, MAGA, MAGA. Good deal. That's kind of an overview, I think, of the world, just because someone mentioned the world, and I thought I somehow was just to cast off on that.
The Mark Thompson Show.
In that direction. But yeah, it was a long, we call it a stem winder. Have you ever heard the term stem winder? Matt, are you familiar with stem winder? Stem winder. Yeah. Have you? No?
No.
Have you heard it before? No.
It's a baseball term, right?
I don't think so. Or maybe it is. I don't know. You could, you can tell me. I think it just refers.
Google it.
It might be a baseball term. I think it refers to your watch, where you have to wind the watch because the speech is going on so long. That is a stem winder. Okay. And Trump gave the stem winder of stem winders because his speech went on longer than any other speech to a joint session ever before.
You're correct. It is the origin is a pocket watch with a stem winding mechanism.
Oh, thank you. So it was a classic Trump speech, filled with the grievance about the last election, filled with recognition and theater. He had stocked the crowd with theatrical moments. He is, after all, a performer, and the audience gathered, sort of did their thing. I mean, they gave him all the applause breaks. It was more of an amen corner than I've ever seen in any congressional body. But let's face it, he has a lot of those people in his pocket. And they even did something that was interesting from a visual standpoint. They put some Republicans in seats that were designated for Democrats so that it didn't look like a whole half of the House wasn't applauding and standing. So it was very interesting. They're very
optics oriented.
Yeah, optics oriented. And optics matters, you know. That is what it looked like last night. And we can play you a little bit now, and I would like to address at some point the issue of the tariffs. And also, so that there is some of the signage that was there. Democrats had
the false signs. Every time he lies, they flick up those signs. False. Nope.
Yeah, I thought that was actually pretty good. You know, I like. I don't like the stand up, wave your cane, stop things down, get thrown out. That's not my kind of. I think that can oftentimes backfire. I like that, where you have a whole part of the gallery that's holding up paddles that say that's false. That I think is just a far more effective way to go. I also thought one of my favorite signs, and I'll get to that young man who was lifted up in a second. There he is, a 13-year-old lifted up. I'll get to him in a second, because that was a big theatrical moment, but there's a dark side to that. I thought one of the most effective signs I saw was Elon steals. I like it because what's going on in Washington is total corruption. Elon Musk is involved in a corrupt endeavor, and it has to be called out as corrupt. So a bunch of fake figures were shared. The Social Security figures that Elon Musk shared in the White House, we all know that's BS. We talked about it on the show. It's been well documented and debunked by now, right? But they leaned in heavy with it last night. And I like Elon steals because we know that he went after agencies that he had an issue with. USAID, the FAA. He had problems and was being handled by the regulatory arms of these agencies, and it's for that reason that he went after them. USAID is an infinitesimally small amount of money that we spend, and we get a tremendous I think, return on that investment. So, yeah, I don't know what I'm looking at the. I'm looking at the. You'll put up whatever I need to see in the chat, but the point I'm trying to make simply is that Elon Musk, who got a round of applause there, is really in Washington doing dirty work. It's corrupt work, and he's jacking government contracts on his way. I also think that you've got in Elon Musk someone who is completely compromised, but so is the President of the United States. I mean, you don't have in this administration anyone who's not compromised. These people couldn't pass, any of them that couldn't pass a basic background check. I mean, and when I say any of them, I know they did some tepid background checks, but all the background checks they did on these guys were really soft-pedaled. He was campaigning heavily and bigfooting the background checks the same way he did in his first go-round. During the first Trump administration, all the people he wanted around him couldn't pass background checks. They did them, and they said, these people are not eligible for security clearance. They are compromised in too many ways. And what did Trump do? He said, I don't care. I want them all to get security clearance, and that's the last of it. And they did. They all got it. Kushner and the rest. BW Rock says, yep, the don't know what you got till it's gone syndrome is a shame to see. Hopefully, I'll get to see the U.S. turn toward democracy in my lifetime. Thank you for that, BW Rock. And I will say this thing about democracy. Democracy is an enormously successful way to have issues settled in all of these different countries with roiling controversies of one sort or another. So when you don't have that, when you just have an authoritarian, when these controversies and the anger of the populace is felt, it becomes a far uglier situation more quickly. Democracies really do work to at least channel so many of these grievances and to try to adjudicate them in ways that don't involve violence. We're moving away from that, and that's what scares me. Representative Al Green raising his cane and speaking out against lies, injustice, and fascism was like a cannon firing. Of course, a 77-year-old black man was escorted out. Democrats should have walked out in solidarity, Rain says. Rain, I might part company with you on this. Show us the Al Green thing, and then I'll tell you why I might part company. This is Al Green last night.
In willful and concerted disruption of proper decorum, the chair now directs the sergeant at arms to restore order.
This is after Green had stood up.
Remove this gentleman from the chamber.
And now Green gets his cane and is going up. You can't hear what he's saying because of the crowd, of course. They're all cheering his removal. And then he did leave, of course. And I think I saw somebody say, don't be too tough on him or something like that. I thought I remembered that from last night.
I wonder why it's okay for Marjorie Taylor Greene to holler out the most obnoxious things against President Biden, but it's not okay for Congressman Green to speak out against Trump. There's a hypocrisy there that bothers me.
I think you can stand up and shout something. I think this is a new era. I mean, in the old days, just 10 years ago, I would have said that, or maybe longer ago than that. I mean, there's a sense of decorum that has always prevailed, but I think now that decorum and the general decorum of political discourse in America has changed. So in that spirit, maybe you can shout things, or you really shouldn't shout things, though. And I think I just don't think it's a good plan. But I mean, again, as I say, but the other thing is, after you stand and shout things, you should sit down. Okay, I mean, if you're going to really just stop the proceeding so that you can make your speech, and I'm on his side. He was standing up and yelling about Medicaid, and I think he's right. But I thought, the stopping of the proceeding the way he was doing it is not right. And of course, the visual on escorting this guy out, as noted, the 77-year-old black man escorted out, is like, yeah, well, that's par for the course for America. You could say it. But I also felt as though, I don't know, he was stopping things down. I don't think you get anything by the Democrats walking out with him. I just don't. Again, I'm only thinking of what you're, what you want to get from that moment. I get it. You get we don't have to sit here and listen to this stuff, but I think in the end, it won't win the day. Maybe that's the best way. Look, that's just my opinion. I mean, you may feel as though I'm going quietly. Trevor Starr in Hollywood with a 1010 super chat says, the Democrats should have shown the same respect to Trump that MTG showed Biden. Well, I think in a way they did. I mean, I think they shouted out. They had those paddles. I felt like, it was a bit, it was like controlled protest. Unresponsive democracy, says Ryan with a 10 euro super chat. Thank you. Unresponsive democracy opens the door to authoritarianism. It's not the autocrats' fault. It's corrupt and decadent lawmakers. You're right, Ryan. This speaks to what I was saying before about democracy having in it, ideally, the mechanisms by which you can have political discourse and disagreement and then reach a kind of conclusion. What's happened in America is we have money that has completely infiltrated our political system, and it's been allowed and, in fact, ruled upon as legal by the Supreme Court. When you say a corporate voice is a personage that is allowed to speak through political contribution, you have opened the door to what is outrageous corruption. And since then, the Supreme Court has ruled to allow even more corruption, how you can actually pay off public officials. So you're right. Democracy, as it's quacking right now in America, isn't the kind of democracy I'm talking about. But I'd rather have that than the rise of an authoritarian to take over. And it's basically my way or the highway, which is really the way we're going. And we're going there in a hurry. Knowing Marie Clarity with a $5 super chat says, I'm pretty sure Trump's own Social Security Administration had said that we are paying 200-year-olds. Claims are false, yet it was in the speech. Exactly. This was one of my real issues with the speech. And I want to, what's the situation with give me 2 minutes before Rothmann comes. I've got about 2 or 3 minutes, because this is one of the major issues I had. And I'm making it a major issue for 2 reasons. One of them is they're going to go for Social Security, as we've said many times. I told you they're going to privatize it. They're going to go for it every which way. They're going to give you the BS about this is a new, improved system. We found so much waste and abuse in the old system.
Trump keeps saying he's not going to touch it, Mark.
He's not going to. I mean,
I'm not taking away your Social Security, he said.
He said a lot of stuff. He said a lot of stuff. Don't believe anything.
Where's my false paddle?
Give me the, look, here's what he said last night about Social Security. This is
just
wall-to-wall
the
BS.
beginning.
Wall-to-wall BS.
The Government Accountability Office, a federal government office, has estimated annual fraud of over $500 billion in our nation, and we are working very hard to stop it. We're going to. We're also identifying shocking levels of incompetence and probable fraud in the Social Security program for our seniors, and that our seniors and people that we love rely on. Believe it or not, government databases list 4.7 million Social Security members from people aged 100 to 109 years old. It lists 3.6 million people from ages 110 to 119. I don't know any of them. I know some people that are rather elderly, but not quite that elderly. 3.47 million people from ages 120 to 129. 3.9 million people from ages 130 to 139.
Stop for a second. And again, to remind you, this is a way in which the Social Security Administration does not pay those Social Security claims that can't verify a birth date. They put in a ridiculously high number. It's just the way it's coded. They put in a ridiculously crazy date of birth so that the system won't pay these out. So these may be in the system, but they're not being paid. So he goes on a whole riff here. Continue talking about how we're going to root out. We're going to find out who these people are. We're going to go
from ages 140 to 149. And money is being paid to many of them, and
none
we're
of them.
searching right now.
None of them.
In fact, Pam, good luck. Good luck.
Pam Bondi
You're going to
is talking
find
about
it.
course.
But a lot of money is paid out to people because it just keeps getting paid, and nobody does. And it really hurts Social Security and hurts our country. 1.3 million people from ages 150 to 159,
And it goes on up to
over
300 it goes, but-
130,000 people ages of 220 and 220.
Yeah, these are,
More than
and you know,
100 years
again, these are
older
applause
than our country.
and laugh lines. You know how ridiculous. Look how government is so
why
stupid.
is-
Thank
why
God
is he-
we're here. You know, to
I don't understand the why here. Why is he doing that when he knows it's not true?
Because why does he say anything? Because it's not true. I mean, it's just it's because to make the argument and to set the playing field the way he wants it
Yeah.
for what will be the privatization of Social Security. That's why he's doing it. Why does he say that we're not going to spend any more money in Ukraine because we've already spent 350 million? We haven't spent 350 million. That's a made-up figure, 350 million. We spent over 350 billion. We spent, I think, over 100 billion. 125 billion, that's a lot of money, but it's not 350 billion. And that matters. I mean, you're making an argument and you're making it with completely invented facts. So the Social Security Administration has worked efficiently. It's one of the most efficient agencies in all of Washington.
Yeah.
And USAID is quite efficient. I really, you know, this Doge crew, they just came in like stormtroopers and they recklessly dismantled in those two cases, of the most efficient agencies in all of Washington. So, and it was done so recklessly that it is creating all kinds of problems. Now, at the Social Security Administration, they have had a bunch of layoffs. And now they're saying that there may be an interruption in Social Security checks and some of the general services that SSA is involved with because of those layoffs. I mean, there are real consequences here. And there are real consequences to BS reports. Musk is completely full of it. He's there to jack government contracts for himself. He doesn't care about U.S. government. When has he ever served U.S. government? Elon Musk. When has he ever been involved in public service? When has he ever been involved in charity? The guy is, he's like a Bond villain. He is the richest man in the world, and he's befriended Donald Trump by buying his campaign. And now he is dismantling government and starting with the agencies of government that he's had a beef with, including the IRS. The IRS is the revenue machine for the U.S. And you're seeing that dismantled as well. Let me bring on John Rothmann, and then we can look at some more cuts from last night. But I think that Social Security aspect to the talk last night, to his speech, critical. I mean, you should get that memo. I've been giving it to you here day after day. I'm sure it's obnoxious, but they are going for Social Security. A MAGAverse of madness equals tariffs and firing thousands and deporting people doing work which no one else will do, equals the best economy ever. We also won at Pearl Harbor and the Alamo from Luis. Yeah. I mean, there definitely are real effects of all of this. So.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I want to bring on this guy. He's a great presidential historian and author, also lecturer, and our former colleague at KGO, John Rothmann, everybody. Hi, John.
Hi, Mark.
What were your takeaways from what the president said last night?
You know, I'm an old speech teacher and a speech coach, and I used to go to tournaments where I would judge how people spoke. And I have come to the conclusion there are two critical factors. One is the content. And I have to tell you, if I were reading his content, the inaccuracies were absolutely unbelievable. The other was his delivery. And you must understand from a delivery point of view, just in terms of standing there and belting it out, he did a very effective job. What impressed me about last night was the division in the House. You know, the old expression of Lincoln's, a house divided against itself cannot stand. That's the House of Representatives. The Democrats clearly do not agree with Donald Trump, and the Republicans, even those who know better, are unwilling to stand up and face him because they're afraid of retribution.
Yeah, I think you saw that very much on display. There was a moment that was, and Donald Trump, brilliant performer, as I've said. I mean, he really does. And I know I always get angry emails when I say it, so I probably should stop saying it. But
No,
he's
it's
such
true, Mark.
he's
It's
a
true.
great,
That's
he
my
really
whole
loves the
point.
media. Yeah,
That's the point I was trying to make to you. His delivery is, in terms of drama, is superb.
yeah, he really takes the room. In fact, he called out the Democrats early. I know I'm not going to get applause from you guys, and I know you're not going to agree with anything that I say. It was as though he was challenging them to, and calling them out early. But what I wanted to play for you, because he has a note, and there are a lot of theatrical moments like this with other presidents as well, where they, hang on, I have to sneeze.
And this
Where
is
they
really
stuck-
nothing to sneeze
Sorry,
at,
go ahead.
Mark.
What's that?
I said this is nothing to sneeze at.
Of course, it's a Rothman-esque moment. I wanted to mention that these theatrical moments are oftentimes played up by other presidents as well. They'll stock the gallery with various people, and they'll make a point about so and so. He's a pipe fitter out of Michigan, and he lost his family and the such and such. So there's a
That
lot
was
of that.
Ronald Reagan's technique. He's the
Yeah.
one who introduced the whole idea.
So Trump did the same thing, but Trump, of course, does it with a real a flair for the dramatic. He's very performative in most everything he does, Trump. And he, at one point, had this 13-year-old who I guess has brain cancer. Do we have the moment? Go ahead and play it if you would, please, Matt. Because I thought it was interesting. A couple of things here. I can't hear any audio on it, but
It's not playing. Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Maybe.
no, still no audio. But, you had in the gallery, you had several people who intersected with their lives and stuff he's talking about. Law enforcement. One person lost, that woman you're seeing now, she lost her family. He was a law enforcement officer. But
It's
then
her husband.
Her husband, yeah.
Yeah, who leapt into the breach, if you remember.
No, I don't. What was that? I'm sorry. What was the specifically again? It was the he was.
She's the one with a 1-year-old child. Her
Right.
husband threw himself into the line of fire and was killed.
That's right. Okay, thank you. So that's a special moment, especially when I think Trump likes to align himself with cops. I mean, the oddity of that moment is associated with the January 6th protest and storming of that same body where he's making the speech, where police officers were beaten close to death by the angry mob. So if you're on the side of the cops, how come you have been so much in defense of the J6ers that you pardon them all? It's an extraordinary thing, but that really wasn't.
I got to tell you what blew me away is on Friday, and I came on your show briefly, and I appreciated that opportunity. We saw an incident in the Oval Office that defies history. We've never had such a thing. And you would think 72 hours later that it would still have had an impact on people in the House of Representatives. The Republicans completely overlook it. In fact, they call it a triumph. And J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States, who may well be America's next president, remember he's only a heartbeat away, J.D. Vance is already deprecating our allies, including Great Britain, in such a fashion that our allies are furious. You opened with something, Mark, and you said something that I think was very important. The world order that has existed since World War II is now being shattered by Donald Trump. And that, to me, is absolutely beyond comprehension. It was a tag team, Trump and Vance ganging up on Zelensky. And may I say, why was Trump able to read that letter last night from Zelensky saying he wanted new talks? Because Zelensky is being blackmailed into this by Donald Trump. He's being forced. And I must say it's extortion. But that's Donald Trump's technique. It is extortion. And it is tragic that we are now in a position where, well, his numbers are completely wrong about the amount of money we've given to Ukraine, completely wrong about how much money the Europeans have given to Ukraine, completely wrong about the Europeans being repaid, which is untrue. Now he wants the mineral rights in Ukraine. And I can tell you it is extortion. That's all it is. But Zelensky has his back against the wall. There is no choice. He has to play ball with Donald Trump. And when they talk about playing cards, remember in that conversation, the simple truth is Zelensky doesn't have many cards to play, even if Europe does back him. So
it's not a it's not even a card game anymore. He's signing this at gunpoint. I mean,
Well, you heard the news this morning. The United States is now withholding intelligence information from the Ukrainians. Do you know what that means?
Mentioned that earlier.
It's a horrific blow.
Yeah.
And he suspended aid as well.
Yeah,
I can only tell you, and I really want you all to understand this. This is an impeachable offense. He doesn't have the right to impound funds that Congress has appropriated. He is betraying an alliance, which has been longstanding. The hatefulness and the vindictiveness of Donald Trump, whose anger at Zelensky stems from the first impeachment, where he, Donald Trump, tried to blackmail Zelensky into giving him dirt on the Bidens and the Biden family, is just, it's unconscionable. And I kept thinking to myself, if the Democrats had pulled this, the Republicans would have been up in arms. And the fact that Republicans are silent is shameful, a shame on the Republican Party.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, it's the shame. There's enough to go around. So last night, I'll just mention it because I just think it's quite important that the moments that our theater can sometimes play to all sorts of ends, and the theatrical moment of last night with that little kid, the 13-year-old, is heartbreaking. You see he has brain cancer. His father is there, lifts him up for the front of the gallery, and the
head of the Secret Service gives him his little badge, and the little boy, very excited, gives him a big hug.
Yeah, there it is. We're showing it to you now. That's the little kid who is, waving to the gallery. That's his dad, lifting him up. And I was struck, of course, because it's a super moving moment, and it's hard not to be hit by the emotion of that, by both the emotion of that child's struggle, and also how Donald Trump, in an instant, his administration has stopped funding for cancer research, the very things that might help others, if not this 13-year-old.
Exactly.
He's
and may
undermined.
I point out to you, I don't mean to interrupt, but I want you to know, yesterday, Robert Kennedy Jr. did a whole thing on the measles epidemic. He listed a whole series of things you could do, and you know what was missing from the list? The vaccination. It's grossly irresponsible and wrong. And I say this emphatically. I don't care if you're a Trump supporter or not. It's wrong. It's bad science. And the arrogance of Donald Trump, who, by the way, personalizes everything. He is the victim. He is the one who was prosecuted or persecuted politically. I found it to be offensive in every single way. And although the Democratic response, which was 11 minutes long, but you can't respond in 11 minutes, and you're not talking about being able to respond to the text. The old days when, if you were in high school or college debate, that you took notes and then you got up and you really gave a rebuttal. Now, that could happen if somebody who had the skill to do it. But nobody who would be approached to do that, and all of these 10 to 11-minute rebuttals are completely forgettable. Although Senator Slotnick,
thank you, Tammy, for making the point that I was making. NIH child cancer defunded or stalled. I mean, this is against the backdrop of that. This is the moment you're going to play. You're going to hold up a 13-year-old who had brain cancer, even as you defund and put on a sudden freeze all of the potentially incredible breakthrough research. I mean, apparently they're making some serious breakthroughs in the treatment and discovery of the causes of the different kinds of cancers. People who know anything about cancer, it has all of these different sources. It's the same, and we can talk to the doctor when he gets here, because I don't know that much, but I know that the reason you can't find one silver bullet for cancer is because they all manifest, and they all really have their origins in different ways, different reactions in the body.
You understand? He's cutting funds. He's cutting
health
funds
and
for
science.
research.
So as they hold the 13-year-old up, I'm weeping on the inside, but also weeping for the lack of research funds that we had dedicated to trying to help 13-year-olds who have cancer like that. And the last thing I would say is a smart-ass thing to say, which is they made him a Secret Service agent last night. They gave him the badge. Isn't that what you said, John?
Yes.
They gave him, and I thought to myself, well, you know what? he's as qualified as everybody else in that administration. That 13-year-old who has absolutely no, I mean, I understand he's not really going to be an agent. This is a ceremonial moment, but I'm thinking it points up and reminds me how everybody in that administration essentially just got there an hour ago. Most of them have no sense of government. So
May I throw one other thing out? I know we have limited time, but I want to make this clear. Donald Trump has nominated for Solicitor General of the United States and another for Deputy Attorney General, both of whom are saying that the president has the right to defy the courts. I want you to understand the court yesterday on a 5-4 ruling with the 4 conservative justices voting as a block. It's astounding to me. It's the complete corruption of the American political system. And the independence of the courts is so vital. But you know that with Alito and Thomas, particularly those two on the court, that Donald Trump really thinks he can ride over all of this. And then
we'll see what happens with this aid money. I mean, the Supreme Court has ruled that the aid money must be spent. It must be released.
No. What they said, they put a temporary hold. It's a 5-4 decision. And but we don't
put a hold on his
yet.
hold, didn't they?
Yeah, but it's temporary.
Okay, but I get it. But I mean, temporary meaning that the money that was dedicated has already been appropriated must be spent there, right?
Yes, but only with a final verdict. This was simply a preliminary judgment. It's not the final word yet. And if you read Samuel Alito's dissent, he criticized his colleagues for even going that far. I mean, it's.
Oh well, that I don't even need to read Alito's dissent. I get it. I mean, he's not going to. Alito and Thomas are in the pocket of Trump. But I mean, my God, Alito's house. What flag are they flying today?
I know. But people don't remember that. Do you understand? What you and I remember, most people don't. And I'm not going to be sidetracked on this because in the end, there are only 2 brakes that can be put on all of this. One is the Supreme Court, which I believe will ultimately have to rule, and the second are the midterm elections. And the American people are going to have to really speak loudly in that midterm election. If the American people fail, we're in deep trouble.
Well, I mean, this presumes a lot. I'm concerned about the next election. The tariff situation is underway, John. And
you heard what happened this morning? They're easing the tariff just on the automobile industry for 1 month. So that was a breather. But evidently, this morning, President Trump spoke with the Prime Minister of Canada, and the White House read was that it was not particularly positive, but not negative. That is to say, it was sort of a neutral discussion. But I can tell you, my friends in Canada are absolutely livid over it, and the Mexicans the same. Do you remember the Republican Party, which favored free trade? Remember Ronald Reagan's great achievement was free trade agreements between the United States, Mexico, and Canada, a North American free trade zone. What Donald Trump has just done is repudiate the entire Reagan philosophy.
Well, forget about Reagan. I mean, they picked up that it's GOP philosophy. GOP are free marketers. I mean, as you say, they might have been led by Reagan, but I mean, they've really completely deep-sixed everything in fealty to this man. And it's not just Mexicans and Canadians who should be bothered. I think there is going to be a lot of agitation here in this country. I mean, there will be higher prices on a bunch of stuff.
And it's not only, it's here, it's China, it's Japan, it's many of our major trading partners. This is a very serious issue. And the American people don't grasp it yet. And the Republicans seem, and this is what bothers me, the Republicans seem to just march in line. Even those who call themselves Reagan Republicans are not willing to stand up and be counted. So it's very disturbing. And I did want to emphasize again this question of defiance of the courts. If you have a Solicitor General of the United States and you have a Deputy Attorney General advising the president he can defy the courts, and if the Supreme Court were to rule against Donald Trump, and he simply said, well, to hell with you, it's very serious. I also wanted to comment on J.D. Vance and his comments about Ukraine. What J.D. Vance said, deprecating the whole issue of Great Britain and its role, was infuriating and completely irresponsible for a vice president of the United States. And so we have a long way to go in terms of resolving this. Somebody said, well, what if Trump were removed from office? And I said, the answer is you'd have J.D. Vance. Yeah. And J.D. Vance is no great blessing, I can assure you.
I understand the anger and I understand the outrage. I understand the fury of the opposition. but the calls for impeachment, et cetera, they're just absurd. I mean,
They
this
are.
guy,
Can you
it's just,
explain? We should explain. Even though there are grounds, if the Democrats control the House and the Senate, there certainly would have been an impeachment resolution. But the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee is Jim Jordan. And with Jordan as the chair and the Republicans in the majority, there's just no point. Nothing can harm Donald Trump from that
the
point of
last
view.
thing that John said. I mean, everything John said is right, but I mean, in the majority, you just can't. You're not the majority. You're the minority. You can't do anything.
That's
And
right.
I mean, sadly, that's just a look. I'll state it bluntly. The guy engineered a coup. He engineered a coup on this nation. Trump tried first legal means. He protested the election results with Giuliani running ahead of that parade. And then through a series of changes he made at the highest levels of the Justice Department, he tried to sow doubt about and chaos about the election. He replaced his attorney general with a guy who he asked to make an announcement saying there are questions about the election, because all he needed was the cloud of question to be out there for him to intercede, for then any number of things to happen to allow him to remain in power. When that didn't work, we ended up with the forcible takeover of Congress. And so when you can't impeach a guy for that which I just described, and I just broad stroked it, he had fake electors. There were a lot of things. I mean, it wasn't just kind of my interpretation of events. The trail of breadcrumbs is clear. And when you can't impeach and remove a guy on the basis of that, then there's no getting him on any of these other things.
I regret to say that you are correct.
John, how do you game out what's going to happen at Social Security?
Social Security, first of all, is not an entitlement in the sense that of anything more or less than you paid into it and you should get it back. Donald Trump has pledged, as Kim McAllister pointed out earlier, that he is not going to tamper with that. But if you watch the cutbacks in Social Security, you talk about what the Social Security Administration is doing now. And by the way, the absurd piece that you played about 250-year-old people collecting Social Security, you have to understand exactly right. Social Security is under attack. If the American people understand that, they won't stand for it, because the Social Security that I paid in, that is there for me, is not an entitlement. It's what I put into it, for heaven's sake. And I'm entitled to have it out when I want it. And so I think this is something that everybody needs to understand. The same thing applies to Medicaid. People don't understand the difference between Medicare and Medicaid, but there are 80 million Americans who have Medicaid benefits. And if they lose those benefits, believe me, we are in deep trouble.
These are, well, you just said that I don't understand it. Why don't you explain it? I mean, these cuts that you're talking about in Medicaid, these are designated and directed toward those who need help the most in our society.
That is correct. And it's part of the state program as well. So what you're dealing, that's why we have Medi-Cal. But the whole point being that Social Security and Medicare should be sacred to the American people. We are a nation that depends on those two programs. And I think when you talk about chopping those programs or reducing those programs, I think the American people won't stand for it. You remember, by the way, after the 2004 election, George W. Bush talked about making Social Security voluntary. Had he done that before the election, he would have lost for sure. And after the election, he proposed it and then had to step back because there was such anger about that. By the way, the other question of the farmers. If you heard what Donald Trump tried to do, saying that I'm the farmer's best friend, farmers know he isn't. And these tariffs are going to have a huge impact on farmers across the country. And by the way, did you hear the chairman of Target, the president of Target, who made the statement clearly, if these tariffs go through, prices are going to go up? And the American people won't blame Joe Biden. I got to make one other comment. I just keep going. But the idea of a president of the United States attacking his predecessor, as Donald Trump did last night on more than one occasion, was to me absolutely shocking. And I think it is infuriating because, well, you heard it in the Oval Office in the conversation with Zelensky. Why was Trump so angry? Because if you remember that so-called perfect phone call, Trump wanted dirt on the Biden family and on Joe Biden.
Well, he didn't. He wanted just the announcement of the investigation. I think he would have been happy with
he
that.
wanted dirt.
There was no dirt to get. I mean,
that's not the point. Do you think
that
it
is
matters?
very much the point. He just wanted.
He
just wanted. Now I like it because now we're arguing. I'm always happiest when I'm arguing with Rothman. He wanted the announcement. If there was dirt there, great. But what he wanted was they were an announcement that he could work with, that they were looking into. Isn't that look? You're the senior voice here, so you can
he
correct
wanted
me.
dirt on the Biden family.
All right.
And you remember there was a prosecutor who was removed, and that is what really got to Trump, because he said it's clearly a cover-up. But whoever is right or wrong, we are now deflected, just as Trump wants us to be deflected, from the simple truth that Donald Trump is a disaster for American democracy and a disaster for our country's future. And every day you hear more and more and more of it. I want to go back to one thing, and that was Bobby Kennedy Jr., who listed, you should have Kim look it up. Yeah, I'm always telling you these things, but to see, he listed a whole bunch of stuff to combat measles and didn't mention the measles vaccine. Yeah. I mean, the absurdity is ridiculous.
The IRS is drafting plans now to cut its workforce by as much as half. It'll be a mix of layoffs, attrition, and incentivized buyouts. They, I was saying before, John, actually run a really efficient branch of government. The IRS is one of the most efficient in Washington.
Yeah, by the way, the IRS and the Social Security Administration.
Yeah.
He's gutting both, because then he can say, you see, they don't really work. We don't really need them. Of course, I just sat down with my accountant to go over my taxes. And if he wants to abolish the IRS, well, we can certainly talk about it as long as before April 15th.
Well, I mean, we can be glib about it, but the reality is that is the revenue machine for the U.S. I mean,
of course,
for a country that's so underwater, and all I hear about is how underwater we are, and I think we are on some level. You've got to look at this incredible resource, which is the IRS, and of course, the first thing they got rid of was everybody who's involved in the investigative part of the IRS that deals with higher net worth individuals.
And that's what they're doing in the FBI. I don't mean to prolong the agony with you, but I want to just point out that yesterday, the director of the FBI in New York, without cause, was dismissed. Of course, he is someone who has defended agents who have been accused of doing their job investigating January 6th. And when Kash Patel, as the new director of the FBI, said, well, we're not going after anybody. It's a lie. It's a blatant lie. They are. And the proof is what happened in New York yesterday.
At the IRS, just to round it off, they've already gotten rid of 7,000 of those probationary employees, right. Those who are in the first couple of years, or I think it's 1 year or less of service in the case of the IRS.
Have you called the IRS number recently with tax questions?
I have not.
Oh, try it. You'll see how difficult it is to get through.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they would argue that that's the problem with the IRS and the problem with the government, that they don't handle the public's need for support in any kind of professional way, and that's why it's a waste of money. I would say, A, that's wrong. I mean, maybe you couldn't get through to the IRS, I don't know. But if you look at the Veterans Administration, it's run very well, actually. I mean, I think a lot of those who are on VA benefits and continue to get those, that's an example of an organization very well run.
Amazing.
There are other parts of the government that run very well also. And I would just point you to private enterprise. Everybody thinks, private enterprise, they handle everything better. Really? Do they? Have you tried to reach the cable company? Try to call your cable company or DirecTV or whatever your jam is. I mean, that's private industry. Private military. We pay 50 to 100 times sometimes what we're paying for private service members to handle the same job. It's great. The privatization argument is another one bankrupt of any legitimacy.
You're absolutely right. I agree with you 100%. And the American people will catch on. I believe Trump will be brought down by his own hubris. I think he's cutting off his nose to spite his face. And all you have to do is take a look at all the claims that Doge made, which have had to be withdrawn because, well, you and I both know it's really a whole fraud. Donald Trump and Elon Musk
Doge is a complete fraud. That's why I like that Elon Steele's I was kind of rating the signs last night, the signage that was held up. And I like that Elon steals. Excuse me. John, last thing on the way out here. Tell me what the appropriate protest is when you're there in an august body like Congress, but the rules you've seen change a little bit. The culture has changed with people shouting things, wearing those hats, dressing in various colors. There's this sort of messaging within that, again, general decorum that's associated with that body. What is acceptable in your judgment?
You know, I have to tell you, Mark, you've been in because you grew up there, you've been in the House chamber. I consider it a sacred place, and I do not believe it is a place for demonstrations. That's what bothered me about January 6th. What I believe is that the leadership of the Democratic and Republican parties need to establish certain rules which exist for the benefit of the institution and their members. There was an article many years ago in Look magazine or Life magazine dealing with the question of masters of the House, and it dealt with the Democratic leader, who was Sam Rayburn, and the Republican leader, who was Joe Martin. Not only were opposites politically, but they were best friends, and they kept decorum in the House. And that is precisely what should happen. Same thing applies in the Senate. What you're seeing now is a complete change of what used to be a convivial operation. You could it's like, if I may use the best example, you can use Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan. They went at each other right and left, but at night, cocktail hour, they got together and swapped stories. But I'm afraid those days are gone. What bothers me is if you look behind Donald Trump, if you look at the speaker and the vice president, these two individuals who have encouraged this kind of disunity and lack of respect, it's just, to me, an American tragedy. And may I say, if I may cap it by saying, that's what last night was, an American tragedy. But fortunately, we will recover. And I believe that with all the power and hope that I can muster, because if we don't, this country is in deep, deep trouble. Just ask the world. The world is counting on us. And what do we have as a president? Somebody who doesn't understand the world. It's just terrible.
You can hear more of John Rothmann with his podcast. It's a daily offering. You can get it. It's called Around the Political World with John Rothmann. You can also find John Rothmann's musings in Voice. What is it? Voice of SF?
The Voice of San Francisco. Just so everybody knows, I do about 10 minutes every day on Around the Political World with John Rothmann. No cost for that. And also 10 minutes from the Voice of San Francisco on local and state affairs. I do that every morning. It's 5 days a week, and we have a remarkable listenership, Mark. And I want to encourage everybody here. You need to understand, you may have heard KSFO shut down. That is, the KSFO is now KGO, but 560, which was KSFO's signal, is no longer in use. When you go to 560 on the AM dial, there's nothing there. It's nothing. And the fact that we no longer have the outlets of a KGO or a KSFO means we have to rely more fully on the wonderful work that Mark Thompson and Kim McAllister do every single day. And if you have not contributed, please do. We really believe in what you're doing, Mark. And I want to say that we appreciate the support that you get, and anything I can ever do to help anytime. You don't have to double my salary. Everybody should know I do not charge for my services with Mark Thompson.
And we get what we pay for. Am I right, everybody? Let me just say, how dare you, John? How dare you? I
have such a high regard for you that, I'm willing to do it for nothing.
I love that you contribute the way you do, and we enjoy so much both you being available and also being here regularly. So
anytime, Mark, anytime.
John Rothmann, everybody. See you, John.
The Mark Thompson Show.
This is Mark Thompson.
Feels great.
When they raided Mar-a-Lago, God didn't like that.
I am excited about our next segment. Before I get to it, though, I must have a little coffee. The Coachella Valley coffee continues to be the best coffee I've ever tasted. I have had coffee across the world, as it probably will come as no surprise to you. Excuse me. Mm. It is the great taste experience of Coachella Valley coffee. Kim likes the tea. I like the
have
coffee.
tea. I have
Courtney
my
likes the
vanilla
tea and the
Mhm.
coffee. We make cold brew in the summer. We make the warm, fabulous, rich roast in the winter months and in the spring months. So here it is. You go to their website, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com, and when you check out teas, coffees, etc., and there are all kinds of tasting notes about exactly what you're getting. Look, this is a boutique roastery. This is a high-end roastery, and they've given our audience a special deal. And I've been drinking this coffee for years, and they've just come on as sponsors. It was like the coolest thing ever that this coffee that I love so much is here and has a small sponsorship with us. So in any case, go to their website, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. As I say, their tasting notes and descriptions of all the different beans. It's all hand roasted. And CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Then on checkout, you add Mark T in the discount code box, and you've got yourself 10% off on anything that you order. It can be
Just
merch,
give me
it can be
truth.
tea, it can be coffee. Yeah.
It says cue the harp. What happened to the harp?
Oh, did you
He
not
wants
hear
to
it?
know, is there a musician strike? What's going
Oh
on?
my God! This must be again. We have a problem. You know,
No harp?
you don't hear the harp right now. This is so
No.
no. Right
There's
now, you're
no
not hearing
harp.
anything.
No.
No. Oh, that is brutal. Matt,
Just does have the same panache without the harp.
I agree, and I'm actually playing it, and I hear it in my headphones, but it's not
Oh,
going out there. And
no.
I blame you.
That's probably my fault somehow. I was going to blame Matt, but
There it is.
that's okay. That's not the harp, but it'll do. Yeah. Anyway, I'll take that up with the management. All right. So for now, we must move on. But grab yourself a cup of Coachella Valley coffee and let's get going. All right.
The Mark Thompson Show.
This guy is an honest to goodness ER doc. He is a working doctor in the trenches, and he is brilliant with a take on so many of the things that are affecting our world now. And not the least of which is a measles outbreak and bird flu with increased momentum. And now with huge changes in Washington that were referenced last night by the President of the United States, it looks as though RFK Jr. will be handling a lot of the basic medical research and strategies moving forward for the next 4 years. Here he is, Dr. Michael Daniel. Now, before we get started, Dr. Daniel, you are going to be with us regularly, which we're very happy about. Yes, we're very happy about that.
I'm excited.
But we wanted to get a name for your segment, and eventually I'll get like some production done around the name, but we couldn't decide on the name. So we have a couple of possibilities, and we want the audience to either offer in the chat a suggestion for the regular medical segment and or vote on a couple of names that we've given you a choice on. Now, do we have, Matt, do we have the choices up in the chat? I'm guessing that's yes, no. That would be a yes or no. No is whenever I hear I don't hear Matt, but whenever there's a delay, I'm guessing the answer is no. Do we have him? Kim, do you know anything about this?
I don't know anything about it. I do like the options, though. What are the options? On call.
Mm-hmm.
On call is one of them.
Vital signs, I think, was one.
Vital signs and on call. Those are the two. And Matt is going to put together
we're taking suggestions in the chat. So if you have any, bring them on.
Yeah, Matt was muted before, so we couldn't hear it, but I'm sure he was.
I kind of like the idea of using the word stat.
Yeah.
In the title.
Do you?
Like, you know, yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's funny, like when you watch all these medical shows, like the old ER show and then the new show, The Pit on Max. I mean, and even like Grey's Anatomy, I mean, the overuse of the word stat.
2 rounds of epi, stat.
I mean, the amount of time that I've actually said that in 10 years of working the ER, I mean, maybe 1 or 2. It just sounds so like contrived now if you were to use it. And people would probably laugh if I was like, you know, I need this blood draw, I need this antibiotic stat. People would be like, whoa, take it easy. So
he needs to calm down.
Cameo says the waiting room. It should be called the waiting room. I've seen a doctor's update. I've seen Vital Signs, again, seems to be, Vital Signs is good. I agree. Vital Signs is pretty good. I don't think that you can really beat Dr. Phlegm is what Phineas
No,
says.
no. That's not okay.
What?
But
Before we
well,
move into measles, can I ask the good doctor a question?
sure. I like it. Kim asks no questions to anyone and is barely interested in anything on the show. So this must mean this is something really, really
I'm
good.
excited
So
about
go
this
ahead.
segment.
I don't want
This
to
is
stand in
great.
her way. Go ahead, Kim. Go.
Kim, how are you?
All right.
This is pivotal journalism right here.
All
Have
right.
you watched the TV show The Pit?
Yeah, no, I mentioned that earlier. I watched the first episode a couple weeks ago, and I've been telling friends and family it is the most accurate representation of what a daily shift is, for sure, above and beyond. The craziness, the constant interruptions, especially. There was a study recently that in an average shift, an ER doctor makes 10,000 decisions.
Yeah.
I
believe it.
Like, because you're constantly thinking, what do I do next with my time? Which patient do I see next? Which test do I order? Which consultant do I call? And that goes on for the whole 8 to 10 hour shift. It's nonstop.
Especially as an attending.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you feel like the representation of having a PTSD, especially in emergency medicine from COVID, is valid? And do you think that enough is being done in real life to help medical professionals through it?
No, it's a great question. And they ended that first episode where he was walking through the waiting room and had that flashback to COVID. And, it's definitely something that we still think about every day. Certainly, to answer your question, and not enough has been done.
Mm-hmm.
To talk to healthcare workers about what we've been through. I think a lot of us probably talk about it personally, hopefully with mental health and therapists that are available. But that episode really kind of drove it home for me.
Yep.
And, to take your question a step further, I've had conversations lately with friends and associates, in light of what's happening with, RFK Jr. at HHS and everything. And there's still so much angst in this country towards doctors and people that work in public health that's coming from the COVID pandemic. And I remember the first month, like March 2020, one of my colleagues in Burbank said, he's like, you know what? This is finally going to be the time where people go back to trusting doctors and public health officials again. And there was certainly a lot of support for us at the beginning, but then, that kind of dwindled. And, recent studies, you look at how many Americans like mistrust physicians in public health. And, there's certainly a lot of work that feels like we have to do to regain that trust. But at the same time, again, going back to answer your question, I feel like there's so much unresolved PTSD and stress that we went through during that time where we had to show up to work every day when most people were furloughed or working from home. And I had no idea what I was walking into any shift.
Yeah, I mean, the reality of that horror, I can call it that. I mean, when you're having to, wear a hefty bag because you don't have the PPE you need. I mean, it's a, isn't that what it was? PPE, personal protective equipment.
PPE,
Yeah.
yes.
So I think we all lived it. I mean, we're all like, holy, well, you saw it in New York as the regular shift changes were greeted with applause, et cetera. So I think it's a good question about the PTSD. I want to get you to the thing that's going to give us PTSD in a couple of years, which is the stuff that's going on now. So as you watched, just because it just happened, as you watched the new President Trump, speak about what was going on in relation to RFK Jr. and to that which RFK Jr. will be in charge of. And it's in the last couple of days that RFK Jr. has made some public statements as well about, for example, the measles outbreak. I wonder if you can give us some takes on some of that.
Right. So I think it was on Monday we awoke to find that op-ed that he had published in Fox News coming out in support of the MMR vaccine. And I think a lot of people were shocked because here's a guy who has made his life about, trying to correlate MMR vaccines, other vaccines with autism, and all his supporters were just floored. Like they didn't know what to do with themselves, because he literally came out and said, you know, we need to get people need to get vaccinated to protect themselves against measles. But then if you look in that op-ed, buried within that, he does reiterate this personal choice about the vaccine. And I think that was kind of like it was a bit of a backslide for me, because again, he's not recognizing the point of vaccines. It is, yes, it is personal. It is a personal choice. It's personal protection. But the point of vaccines is public health, to protect everybody in the community. You're not just doing this for yourself. You're doing it for your elderly neighbor. You're doing it for your immune compromised cousin. And I think he missed that point with that bit of a backslide. And then a couple of days, or just the last couple of days, we had a pre-taped interview that he did on Fox, where he was talking about the government's response to measles in West Texas. And again, he's promoting cod liver oil because it has vitamin A, which has been shown to help treat severe pneumonia. And he mentioned budesonide, which is an oral steroid that's used to being treated kids with severe measles in West Texas. And then he mentioned clarithromycin. So he's mentioning all these treatments that are sort of, you know, making it sort of downplaying how effective the MMR vaccine is, you know, an ounce of prevention versus a pound of treatment. And there's a couple of things we need to point out, because a lot of people are talking about vitamin A and cod liver oil and stuff like that. So the CDC, the WHO does recommend high dose of vitamin A in some cases for severe measles, like the measles that causes pneumonia. There is evidence that works. Cod liver oil has vitamin A, but not anywhere near the amount of vitamin A that you need for it to be therapeutic. And he's mentioning these other treatments, the oral steroid, the antibiotic. You have to remember, if we're giving oral steroids or an antibiotic, that means these kids are very sick with measles, such that they have a subsequent bacterial infection like pneumonia that's requiring an antibiotic like clarithromycin. These kids are super sick. And so again, you know, it's like he'll mention something and then he'll backslide and mention treatments to make it seem like if you get measles and you're hospitalized, it's okay because we can treat it. And that's not the right message.
Boy, that was a great run, because a lot of what he says involves those things to which you've referred that I don't really know, like cod liver oil, erythromycin, steroids, and that can be used in the treatment. And I'm thinking, oh, I didn't know that. Okay, or maybe, you know, and he has that on any number of things. He throws this stuff out. And what you just said, of course, lands so cleanly. Yeah, we all know steroids are these, that's a really, like, you know, I shouldn't say last, but I mean, it's an aggressive step. It's a very aggressive step to handle something that's going on inside the body, along with erythromycin. As you say, that is a body that is in desperate need of help at that point.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And the whole theory with vitamin A is that when you look at the WHO recommendation, it's for countries of the world, developing countries, where there's vitamin A deficiency in the diet. And those kids get measles, they get really sick. Yes, that's where it's going to help. But if you look at what the American Academy of Pediatrics says about vitamin A and measles, if you give too much vitamin A to someone who's already sufficient in vitamin A in their diet, you can cause vitamin A toxicity, which can affect the liver. And so, again, I feel like he's focusing on potential treatments, not recognizing that those treatments are in kids with severe measles complications, as opposed to get vaccinated. We've given billions of doses around the world for however many number of years, and it works. It's very effective. End of story.
Can you speak to me on the complications that's associated, just because we're talking about vaccines, but then I want to get onto the bird flu and, you know, some of the other things that we appear as a nation not to be prepared for, and we've got a guy kind of asleep at the switch on this, or willfully asleep at the switch. So what about the complications? You just mentioned it. You know, we've been giving billions of these vaccines, and on a percentage basis, what are the reactions that really concern you? Like, what percentage actually end up with reactions that would concern you?
I don't have an actual specific number, but I would say it's probably less than 1%. I mean, most of the potential reactions would be, you know, soreness at the site of the infection, a strong immune response like fever, chills, body aches, and that just means your immune system is generating antibodies. But again, this vaccine has been around for decades upon decades, and we've given so many doses across the world and very minimal side effects. I mean, I think RFK Jr. actually mentioned that, some people can't get the vaccine due to, if they're immune compromised and things like that. But again, that speaks to the case that if the key point with the measles vaccine is herd immunity, and you'll hear the 95% number, that if 95% of a particular community is vaccinated against measles, there's not going to be an outbreak. That 95% protects those who are unable to, for whatever reason, to get vaccinated in the first place. Right now, we're seeing in kindergartens across the United States that level is coming down under 95%. So we're losing that herd immunity. And that's exactly what's happened in West Texas and now in neighboring New Mexico.
Just Give Me the Truth says RFK Jr. is medically clueless, but he might be able to do something about the 70% of ultra-processed foods in our supermarkets, or maybe not. Let me help you with that, Just Give Me the Truth, and then I'll turn it back over to the doctor because I've got some questions about bird flu. He won't be able to do, I don't want to use that word, he won't be able to do jack about the ultra-processed foods in our supermarkets. Why? Not because he doesn't believe in that, not even because he's not well-intentioned in that regard. He would like to get rid of the ultra-processed foods. There's no question that we all know those are not good. But because big food is a thing. Big food is a major lobbying force in Washington. So we hear about defense contractors, you hear about the insurance industry, you hear about Wall Street. Well, let me tell you, big food spends a lot of money to make sure that the government stays off their back. And there is no way that they will even marginally, without, they may advertise some BS. It's very Trumpian to, take a victory lap on something that's not really happening. And that's what they may do. But there's no way he's touching anything. He won't touch McDonald's. He won't touch Burger King. He won't touch KFC, etc. And he won't touch the ultra-processed food in the supermarket. Now, I want to ask you about the bird flu. Where are we on the bird flu? I was just reading a piece in the Washington Post that says that bird flu is spreading and America is not ready.
Yeah, that was Dr. Wen's op-ed in Washington Post, and I thought it was very interesting. At the end of that, she mentioned how we urgently need some kind of rapid antigen test at the point of care, which is the emergency room. I mean, we're always still
that's your office, right?
I've made this analogy before that the ER is like the church in the Middle Ages. It was like the last refuge for everybody. So people that were sick, people that are homeless, people that don't have something to eat, people that need social work, it all ends up in the emergency room. It's society's safety net. But to go back to answer your question, if bird flu is going to become a problem where we're going to start seeing patients that have worked on cattle or poultry farms come get sick, they're going to come to the emergency room because they're going to be like, I feel really crappy. I feel like I have the flu. And right now, we don't have a rapid test for that. As I mentioned to you offline, as far as I know, we're one of the first ERs, at least in Southern California, if not California, a little company in Marion Torrance, that we created a protocol to start identifying people who may have been exposed to bird flu. And so those are patients that come to the ER with flu-like symptoms. The one question we ask right up front when you register in the ER is, where do you work? Do you happen to work on poultry farm? Do you work in cattle? Have you been exposed to any wild birds? Because that sets in motion a protocol where we would do a number of different swabs, but we have to send those out to LA County's lab to do the testing. Right now, we do not have a point of care test like we do for flu and COVID and a number of other respiratory viruses in the emergency room. And, I wish somebody with the technological know-how would come up with that, because I wish it was in place now rather than we wait till this thing potentially explodes and then we're trying to play catch up.
Yeah, and it's fascinating that the Biden administration had spent $590 million, or if they had directed that money toward the Moderna mRNA technology to come up with a bird flu vaccine. And there is research along the lines of what you're talking about, which is the kind of testing, the antigen testing on the spot. But all that money appears to be stopped, and some of it may be broken off, that research, by the new administration. As you know, they they're turning everything on its side that way, research-wise. What other, it's funny, you have a series of things, you're so diligent, a series of things that are troubling you right now when it comes to public health policy. And I wonder if we can get to some of those other things that you've mentioned.
Sure. Yeah, so we talked about offline how the FDA just suddenly canceled the March 13 VRBAC meeting. So that's the Vaccines and Related Biological Products Advisory Committee that the FDA has, that around this time starts preparing us for next season's flu. And so they look at the experience of the Southern Hemisphere, and they try to, the scientists, the doctors, they try to predict what are going to be the most likely strains of flu for next year, because the manufacturing for the flu vaccine takes at least 6 months to process this. This doesn't happen overnight. And so that's factories that have to get online, factories that have to hire workers. The WHO has already released what they think are going to be the most likely strains. And so this is an independent group. They're not part of the government. They're not paid by the government, of doctors and scientists who review this data, and they try to come up with the best guess for next year's flu vaccine. And the FDA, without reason, canceled that meeting. They weren't given any rescheduling notice or anything. And the same event, the CDC has their own advisory committee, the ACIP, which is, again, doctors and scientists that are independent, that then take a look at what the FDA has decided, and then they give specific guidance on doses, who should get it, how often. And this isn't just vaccines. This could be any kind of new medications that come to market from the companies. And so that meeting was supposed to be February 26th to 28th, and that was also canceled. And so it makes me really nervous, because what if we don't have recommendations for a flu shot for next year? Like, what are Americans supposed to do? I mean, it's almost going to be like the states are going to have to unilaterally order these doses for their population and go.
And I don't think the states have you can tell me, I'd ask you, do the states have the monies? I don't think the money is there.
No.
This is
unprecedented, Mark. Like, the VRBAC has been meeting like this since 1960. And this is the first time it was canceled. So I don't think we really know how it's going to work.
The measles outbreak in Texas, and the influenza virus. You have a graphic actually on that. Walk us through this. These are hospitalization rates on the left, and the condition, of course, is just influenza and measles. Go ahead.
Yeah, and so just to give a little background information, the MMWR report from the CDC that we talked about previously that had stopped coming out weekly, it did come out again, and it showed that this year's, I'm just going to read this year's flu vaccine, in kids who got it, they were 78% less likely to be hospitalized, and adults, they were 55% less likely to be hospitalized if they were vaccinated. So the flu shot this year was actually pretty effective, despite the large numbers of infections that we saw. But I just wanted to show people the stark contrast. So obviously there's been millions of cases of influenza already this year, and the rate of hospitalization, that means you have severe flu, is only 1.29%. But if you look at measles, specifically in West Texas, even though there's only been about 160 cases, 14% of those kids required hospitalization because of how sick they got. So I just wanted to show people how dangerous measles is, that even though it doesn't have the sheer number, the sheer volume of cases that flu does, if you get measles as an unvaccinated kid, you have a very high chance to be hospitalized. And to go back to answer your other question, the long-term effects, even if you survive, I think somewhat of 30% of kids end up with encephalitis, which is brain swelling, deafness, loss of vision. So, a lot of people that are anti-vax in RFK's group there have said, it's okay to get measles, like get the natural immunity, even going so far as doing those measles exposure parties where they exposed their kids like it was chicken pox. I mean, it's just wild, because your chances of your kid getting very sick are high.
That's alarming. I mean, that's really alarming. The other thing from a policy standpoint, as it concerns medicine, is sort of our disposition to a number of things. You sent us another graph, which I thought was interesting. It speaks to sort of the outreach, the health outreach worldwide. Can you speak to this? This is the cutoff in funding essentially, and what
Yeah.
this cutoff in funding will, from a ripple effect standpoint, would actually expose.
Yes, I don't know if you saw the news today, but the Supreme Court actually ruled that the federal government has to pay what it was promised under USAID funding. So that
Right,
was
they appropriated that money already, and the Supreme Court saying that
right.
that money has to be spent.
So that was interesting. I was happy to see that because I just wanted. This was something I put together over the weekend. This is, the amount of GDP that we spend on global health is less than 1%, and the stuff that we're spending it on for somebody that worked in global health for a number of years, particularly in HIV/AIDS, is unbelievable. So, for example, PEPFAR, that was started by President Bush, and that was a huge initiative to bring treatment, HIV/AIDS treatment, antiretroviral treatment, to millions of people across the world. And right now, a lot of these people that are on these treatment protocols, 20 million, that's at risk. And particularly, let's look at something else like Ebola right now, like responding to outbreaks of Ebola, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, I mean, it's very important. We help fund that. We help support the staff that has to deal with that. They're looking at testing for vaccines and other treatment. In addition to food aid that we provide and like prenatal and fortified food for pregnant women across the world, and malaria, of course. I mean, we're going to see an increase in malaria cases and probably Ebola. The rest of the world.
But just, I want to just, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I wanted to put it in the context of the selfish American who doesn't give a crap about these countries. There are places, and of course, they're underdeveloped, and of course, they have problems, and why are we helping them? And we should help our people at home, whatever. The reality is, a lot of what you just detailed, certainly Ebola, and certainly some of these infectious diseases, one of which we don't even have a name for yet, it's just a breakout in Africa, they do come and will come, if not handled through USAID over there, they will come over here, right, Doctor?
Right.
Or
Yeah, I mean, we're all connected. We all live in one big neighborhood. And you also have to remember that it's not so much about like taking care of the global community, which is, should be priority number one. It's just our funding for these projects is our soft power, right? So in areas of the world where if we were suddenly to leave, that leaves a vacuum for other countries like China, Europe, Russia to go in there and befriend these countries. And, we need friends, we need allies, and funding. So let me just give you a quick example. Back in during the Cold War with polio, the U.S. and the Soviet Union worked together to eliminate their it's not polio, it's their smallpox. Eliminate their smallpox reserves, and then they went to developing countries where there was still smallpox and made sure that it was eliminated. And both countries went because the United States knew that if it didn't go to country A and Soviet Union went there, that country could potentially be a satellite country supporting Soviet Union during the Cold War. And so, that was a clear example of us working together for public health priorities, even though we had our political differences.
This from MAGA Mars. He's our MAGA guy who's always in our chat. How many 100 years supports do we provide while, I don't understand what the wording's a little awkward, do we provide while ignoring cures found but kept hidden by Big Pharma? Can you speak to that conspiracy theory that somehow Big Pharma has the cure for everything, but they're keeping it down because they like giving us the pharmaceuticals that handle our illnesses?
I say this is probably one of my biggest pet peeve when you have people that don't work in healthcare that criticize us for not talking about exercise, nutrition, sleep, everything you need to do to keep yourself healthy. I mean, I mention this to my patients all the time. And, a lot of doctors are just more than happy to just throw a medication, throw a pill at it. But I think it's important for people to know that we do talk to our patients about this. But unfortunately, a lot of time, the reality is that I will go through this spiel about how's your sleep? What do you eat? Do you exercise? And at the end of it, they'll ask me for a prescription anyway. So it's a whole problem, right? Like it's not
that's great. It's a global thing, meaning all of you, not just the symptom, right?
Right.
It's funny. I love that you put it in that context. Like hey, dude, you've got the cure right there. It's in you. Get your ass to the gym or get off the heavy fattening foods or whatever. And look, it's a struggle for me every day. I really do struggle with it because I'm basically a lazy guy who'd just like to do an edible and sit on the couch and watch movies. But I mean, I try to put myself in the game. All of us have to kind of, some people take to it easily, but the idea somehow that MAGA Mars is suggesting that somehow, there's secret cures for all these things, but the pharmaceutical companies keeping them from us. It's sort of absurdist. The other thing I would say on that argument, just generally, I don't know if you agree, but the pharmaceutical companies are going to make money on a cure. Okay, so if there is a cure out there, they're going to find it and they're going to sell it. And the last thing I would say about Big Pharma is, and I've said this before, but I think it's worth noting, it's not that Big Pharma does a lot of bad stuff. They own a lot of our politicians, but not everything Big Pharma does is bad. And one of the things that they do that is good is they come up with great pharmaceuticals to help us. And oftentimes we need that. The problem with Big Pharma is money. The cost of everything. So this is, again, my opinion, not yours, doctor, but my opinion is that we pay way too much in this country for these various treatments and these various pharmaceutical products that are offered to the rest of the world for a fraction of what we pay in the U.S. So that's your problem with Big Pharma. It's not some conspiracy about they've got a cure for cancer, but they're keeping it back because they like to sell you chemotherapy. No. That's not what's going on with Big Pharma. And it's a naive and frankly ignorant position to build that conspiracy. It's just BS. Now, speech over. I want to ask you lastly, if there's anything in this administration's posture that you're encouraged by, is that it's pretty grim as I see it from the standpoint of public health.
Yeah, I mean, I think grim is a great way to look at it. It's funny you mentioned that because after the speech yesterday, I spent too much time, I think, just Googling on the internet, reading all the articles, looking for that grain of hope, to be honest. And then, I came across something else that Kennedy at HHS has now said that they're not allowing any kind of like public comment or discourse on decisions that they make. They threw out that rule as well. It just seems very authoritarian to me, what they're doing with public health. And, I hate to say it, but I just feel like things are going to get worse. And I think it's just so important let me just take a step back. I feel like as an ER doctor, someone who spends a lot of time promoting public health on this podcast, on TV, I feel like I'm always on the back foot. Like I'm always trying to say, no, wait, no, that's wrong. That's incorrect. That's misinformation. And I think we need a better strategy to be more proactive so that we're not always constantly responding to this flooding of the zone when it comes to public health and what these guys are trying to do.
It is also a problem that we need federal government money on so much of this research and so much of this promising research. I mean, the development of so many strategies really can't be done without the deep federal pockets that we have. And so we look to the federal government. And I think there's an issue of trust. And that is something I suspect we'll be talking about in your future visits. But one of the things that's lost when I hear somebody from the Trump administration or Trump himself making comments about public health, I completely discard them. I think it's total BS. I don't believe virtually anything that they say. Now, MAGA people may come on here and say, oh, same thing with Biden. I didn't believe anything. Okay. But I'm telling you, there's demonstrable evidence that virtually everything this guy says is a lie. And so he could tell me that there's a cure for fill in the blank, or don't worry about COVID is what he said. It'll go away. There are only 4 cases. It's going to go away. He didn't want testing of COVID in this country because it made our numbers relative to the rest of the world, our COVID numbers, worse because we realized through testing that more people had contracted the illness. So, I mean, from that administration, I don't think you can engender a lot of trust in the public.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely at this crossroads right now, and we just have to, I think we just have to stay the course and keep, pounding the gavel about what we know about public health, and what we know is what we call evidence-based medicine. And when I mention a a treatment or a vaccine, the way I was trained and the way I was taught in medical school was to always revert back to evidence-based medicine. Like, what does a research study show? How good is that research study? Are there multiple research studies? Because that's what I think we need to drive home for people, is that, especially when you talk about COVID vaccine as an example, and everybody continues to say, well, it's new, it's experimental. During the pandemic, every research study, every research body was focused on the vaccines and how effective they were and when they needed to be updated and changed and how they reduced the rate of hospitalization and severe illness and death. There is so much research out there already on the effectiveness of the vaccine. And you'll hear people that support RFK, people that are in the MAGA movement, that continue to move the goalposts. And RFK himself has said, I want to see more research. I want to see more research. And they focus on just like small things or just moving the goalposts further down the road, further down the road, further down the road. They're never going to be satisfied. And I think that's what you have to realize. There's never going to be a study that they're going to point to and say, okay, I'm done. You were right.
I think there were changes just on the way out. I know we're over time, but the changes in the messaging around the COVID vaccine, there was a sense that it was going to be like the measles vaccine, which is you get it and you won't be able to contract COVID. And some of the early research did show that, but the mutations around COVID, I think, made that problematic, right? And then they had to update what they were saying.
You make a great point, and I'm glad we're finally able to talk about this, because I've been thinking about this for so long. Yes, the initial study showed that it was 95% effective against any infection, but by the time that rolled out, it had already mutated, and it mutated on such a rapid case that even every summer, fall, where we came up with a new booster, by the time it was rolled out, it had mutated again. And I think what we should have said from the beginning was, hey, this is a new disease. We are doing the best we can with what we know right now to protect you all. And things could change. And we were accused of saying that, oh, you're just moving the goalposts. Initially, you said it prevented all infection. Now you're saying it just prevents severe illness and death. And, you know, that is true, but that's just the nature of a pandemic and how the disease is, the virus is reacting to our immunity from infections and vaccinations, and how the virus is mutating on its own. And I think if we could have just maybe said this is going to be a dynamic process from the beginning, maybe would have endeared more trust.
That would have helped so much, because even like the 6 feet of distancing and you know, where you wear the mask, that was all changing. And we're just not used to that. We're used to, here's the vaccine, you get it, 100% effective, and boom, see you later. And it was just the opposite. The landscape was changing. So I like that we visited that. All right, did we come up with a vote for Dr. Michael Daigneaul's, what does the crew think? Matt, were you able to put together a vote? Yeah?
Yeah, it was 70-30. Let me see. Where poll?
We have a poll going. If you just joined us, for Dr. Michael Daigneault, who's going to be a regular here. I like vital signs. How did that do in the
vital signs won the poll 70-30?
I love it. And what was the other one? What was the other one again? It was
I'm happy with that.
On call. Yeah, it was all. So vital signs beats out on calls. We'll call it vital signs. I'll order some production, and you'll have a big intro, and you'll love it. And Kim has a question going out, don't you, Kim?
Well, and by
the way, Kim's never asked 3 questions to any guest that we've ever had on this show. So you are very
people are my people. This is it. So I just had my son had an 11-year-old checkup, and I asked for all the vaccines because I have concerns that they might not be available. So even early, like the HPV vaccine, usually not recommended until after age 12, but at age 11, I requested it. And I asked the question because of Heather in the chat, who is under age 50, but only by a couple of years, and wanted to get the shingles vaccine, went in for it and was told, sorry, we only give it to people 50 and older. But with people having concerns about whether vaccines are going to be available, is there a way to kind of skirt those age limits and get those vaccines that we fear we may not be able to get when we are of age?
No, it's a really good question. I think a lot of it comes down to, if you look at how the insurance companies decide what to cover for us, and it's not just vaccines, it's procedures like colonoscopies, for example, and that's based on recommendations from the associated group. So let me just use colonoscopy as an example, right? Like if you look at the public health guidelines that say colonoscopy should now be at 45. If for somebody that doesn't have any risk factors, if you're 42 and you try to go get a colonoscopy, your insurance is not going to pay for it unless your doctor can say, well, this person is high risk because such and such family member had it. And so I think to answer your question, you could probably get vaccinated or procedures that you want, and you would have to pay completely out of pocket, for your doctor.
So it's an insurance issue more than a
right.
health
Yeah,
issue.
I think it really comes down to insurance coverage, and there's sticklers for when they will do these things because, especially a colonoscopy, costs a bit of money for an insurance company to sponsor that.
Yeah,
so.
there's an anesthesiologist, there's a doctor, there's a whole process. By the way, Kim, don't get Jacob that.
The shingles vaccine? No,
the colonoscopy.
No,
Don't
the
get him
colonoscopy.
that. He doesn't need that yet. Okay,
But is it a legitimate concern that we might not have access to vaccines?
Well, I wish I had the answer to that question. I mean, RFK Jr. has said that, he's not going to take away, not going to prevent anybody who wants to get what they need to get for vaccines. But, you can say that, but you can also make it very difficult for people to access that. So I think it remains to be seen what measures they're going to go to limit our access. Basically say, we're not taking them away, but we're going to make it very difficult for you to get them.
Yeah.
That's a possibility.
And one of the ways they make it difficult is insurers no longer cover it. And so all of a sudden you have to pay out of pocket. You think twice before you get it, and maybe you don't get it at all. So, Kim, I'm going to excuse the witness unless you have other...
No, that's okay.
All right. Kim, well done, Kim.
Kim, how are you?
Very well done. I am I'm grateful for this relationship and for your takes on so many things. And I guess it's called Vital Signs. We'll get you an intro and an outro. But for now,
thank you.
If you're in Los Angeles, you can find Dr. Michael Daigneault on Fox 11 there. He's a regular medical reporter, an expert that they bring in for, just as we have done here. And you can find him here on Wednesdays. Michael Daigneault, the good doctor from the ER. Thank you, Dr. Daigneault. Good stuff. Love that. And I love that we have the Vital Signs poll. Very well done, Matt.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Kim, with a rare bit of interest in the show. I was quite taken by that. Now, Kim,
usually it's not that I'm not interested. You just ask all the pertinent questions.
Oh,
but,
thank you. That was, I
like
that.
It's not really a need for me to jump in.
Now, could you hear that? Could you hear my
yes.
Coachella Valley coffee that time?
Yes.
Good. I'm kind of making good for the
I'll take some too.
Did you see that our logo was jacked by This American Life?
What?
Do you know the podcast This American Life? I mean, who can't love it? But look at the bottom of my cup that as I don't know if you can see it. That
our logo was jacked.
First of all, that is great coffee. Secondly, they take that is on our logo.
Yeah.
And if you put that up, This American Life logo, it's very similar. It's just squared off.
Google it.
Yeah, check it out. Google it. Jeez, that was loud.
Google it.
But anyway. So I mentioned it just because I saw the logo show up there in the bottom of the cup. Now, Kim.
Yes.
I want to do a little news and commentary. Bring us up to speed. There it is. This American Life. Good. Thank you. Bring it up, Matt. It's a little bit like our logo.
It looks like a flag.
Yeah, you're right. They kind of changed it. It was more like our logo before. No, you're right. It's not.
I don't know.
I mean,
I don't see it and think, oh, that's ours.
No. They've adapted it. But you know how ours has, well, you can see ours has the 3 dots and the
little pointy
thought
thing.
bubble or the thing. Or
Yeah.
Put up This American Life. Put that up. They have the same thing, kind of.
Ours is better.
Well, I don't know. I mean, theirs is, This American
on
Life.
America.
Theirs is it's on brand for them. I'm just saying, We can't see it, says Terabyte MC. Are we having trouble with the with your ability to see anything? So we have, it's black, says Mars, huh? Why is it a black screen? This is a problem that we have noticed, that at times when we bring something up, you're not seeing it. Now, like, for example, and we can't tell because it looks fine on our feed.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what the problem is. Kim contacted YouTube, and have you heard back from them or at all?
I messaged
I
them
blame
and
you.
haven't.
Well,
But I'm going to message him again today. Maybe I'll try calling.
This is really a problem. Yeah, repetitive problem is right, Tammy.
Mhm.
I mean, this is we need to figure this out. Yeah, American flag and a speech bubble. Yeah, exactly. That's what that is,
Yeah.
Pietro. Yeah. But anyway, still not seeing video or photos, says Mary Baca. Thank you for the $2 super chat. Yeah, that's a problem, and it's a real big problem. Super sticker from Gordon for $5. Thank you, pal. Appreciate Gordon, who is a California native.
Big shout out.
Teresa O with a $10 super chat saying there seems to be so much wrong that Trump has done and is doing. Why aren't the Democrats not doing more to stop him? Well, I would say two things to that. A, from a legislative standpoint, there's not much they can do because they are in the minority, although, as I've noted before, there are things that they can do legislatively, and I think they are trying along the lines of what Tommy Tuberville did when they were in the minority with the Biden administration, and Tuberville held up all of those promotions of the top military people. But from a legislative standpoint, you really can't do much if you're in the minority. I mean, you can't, you can't impanel investigative committees, et cetera. Those are all, that's really left to the majority party. That's why it's so important to win these elections. Now, what you can do, and I think people are doing, is you can make noise. And one of the best noisemakers, I think, is Bernie Sanders. But there are others. There's Sheldon Whitehouse and Jasmine Crockett and people like that. So I applaud those who are making noise because I think it's a noisy environment and you got to be part of it. You've got to cut through that noise. Trump is truly a clown, unfortunately for us. He's Pennsylvania. He's Pennywise from IT. And we have to deal with the horror and the carnage. Yeah, Luis is right. Thank you for the $5 super chat. I think you're right, Luis. I think it really is a horror. Now, I don't know if you can see that. We have a picture of Trump up now. Does anybody see that, or is that a black screen? I wonder. I mean, this is an interesting problem that we're facing from the standpoint of, yeah, God, I love Bernie. Exactly. Bernie is terrific, and everybody could learn something from Bernie and Sheldon Whitehouse. I mean, just terrific. You cannot see that? Is that what you're saying, Uncle Russ? It's black. So there is something going on with this, and I don't know what it is, Matt.
Now BW Rock sees it, so I don't know.
Oh, you do see it?
Yeah, some people see it. I see it now. Maybe it takes a second.
Yeah, let's put it
for
up
it to
again.
kick in because of the internet connections.
You can see him? No, I mean it should. That's just not. That's not the way it should be. You do see it, Heather. Now I can see it. It's weird.
It looks to me like it's coming up black initially, and then it seems to be clicking in a few seconds, but it's not coming up correctly. It doesn't seem to be on the YouTube. It comes up after a while, but not immediately. So we'll have to work on that.
That's an issue. We have to really look into that. Let's send them another note from us because clearly they don't respond to Kim. I don't understand why, because I respond to Kim. In fact, I responded too much. The minute she cracks her whip, I'm like,
Kim, how are you?
I'm really on it. But
I'm telling you.
Yeah. All right, Kim's news, and we will wrap up around here. So I have other acknowledgments, other comments to respond to, which I'm happy to do. People can disagree with me. It's fine. We appreciate you being here. Of course, my opinions are the correct opinions on things, but if you want to come through with an incorrect opinion, happy to share it, happy to kick it around, and we
smashed it with your iron rod.
Oh yeah, please smash the thumbs up. That helps us in the world of YouTube, and please subscribe to the show. Both those things are free. We are a crowd-funded show, so to whatever extent you can support this show through Patreon and PayPal, go through the website, themarkthompsonshow.com, to get Patreon and PayPal live links, and you can support us that way. But I'm so grateful for this community coming together and letting us offer a forum for a lot of different ideas. We try to share as much as we can, and we'll continue to do that as long as they let us do it. So, Kim's News, quickly, some commentary, and we'll wrap up. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com.
Look at this. Big shout out from Brisbane, Australia. Watching you
Hey!
live today as I wait for Tropical Cyclone Alfred to hit us today. Oh, no.
Fingers crossed everything's okay. Thank you for watching from so far away.
They call
Wonderful.
them cyclones there.
I guess they're not
it's the
not
same
so
as a
far away.
hurricane, but
Now
yeah.
the whole world is close to us, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's a small world. Big shout out from Brisbane. I love Brisbane. I've never been there. I just love the notion. It's kind of an exotic place.
You
I've
don't
been
say
to,
Brisbane,
Melbourne.
Brisbane, like the where SFO is located.
I think they say Brisbane, but I might be
Brisbane?
wrong. I mean, it does.
Yeah.
You do not know what you are talking about.
That's possible. It is possible. I don't know what I'm talking about. It wouldn't be the first time. I thought it was Brisbane. Yeah.
On to news. The White House says automakers will get 1 month exemption from tariffs on goods from Canada and Mexico. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said President Trump spoke to the three big automakers today, or the big three, rather. She said the president granted the exemption so they are not at an economic disadvantage. The Supreme Court...
I hate to interrupt, but you're not
Carry
seeing
on.
the news logo, News with Kim McAllister? You're not seeing that, everyone? Linda George says not seeing it.
Oh,
Seeing
and
it-
then we say seeing it now.
Okay.
It just took a hot second to pop up, I guess.
Yeah, okay.
Mm.
Anyway, go for it. Sorry.
The Supreme Court is ruling the Trump administration must unfreeze foreign aid. The justices voting 5-4 with Chief Justice John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett joining the court's three more liberal justices. The ruling did not give a deadline for when the funds must be released, and that gives the administration a chance to fight it in lower courts. The United States temporarily pausing sharing intelligence with Ukraine. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz said the U.S. has taken a step back and are pausing and reviewing all aspects of this relationship. The United States paused military aid to Ukraine on Monday. Some fallout today following Trump's address to the joint session of Congress during last night's speech. As we mentioned and showed you video of, Texas Democrat Al Green refused to sit down and was yelling at Trump before he was escorted out. Today, Republicans are circulating censure resolutions against the congressman. The Trump administration set to cut 70,000 workers from the Department of Veterans Affairs. That, according to a memo obtained by CNN, it reveals the Department of Government Efficiency will help restructure the VA and resize its workforce. Of course, many people that work for the VA are veterans themselves. Elon Musk set to speak to Senate Republicans today. The tech billionaire who leads Doge will answer their questions and concerns about his efforts to cut costs and fire federal employees. The Prime Minister of Greenland is rejecting President Trump's notion that the country will become part of the United States. Imagine that. In a social media post today, Prime Minister of Greenland said Greenland belongs to Greenlanders. He said this is what the Americans and their leaders need to understand. We can't be bought and we won't be ignored. Apparently, Trump said the United States will get Greenland one way or the other.
Well, that's what he said, and it was interesting because he did say, then he riffed on it, the big, beautiful Greenland. It's there with all of that. We need it for national security. We need it for international security, and we're going to get it. We're going to make a deal, or we're going to get it one way or the other. I mean, it was like this guy who everybody was talking about. He's a peacemaker. He doesn't want to. Finally, we get a guy in who's not into war. Well, he's smack talking pretty much every ally, and he said we're going to get it one way or another. Okay, well, I mean, what does that say to you? I mean, I'm telling you, it's a mob boss running America now, and he's got all of his mob chieftains who are people like Kash Patel, etc., who are populating government to do the work of the mob boss. That's exactly what's happening here.
Next up on the list, A couple of job losses. A majority of San Mateo County voters favor removing Sheriff Christina Corpus. Early returns in yesterday's special election regarding Measure A see it passing with more than 85% of voters giving it approval. At that point, only 20% of ballots had been counted. Measure A would alter the county charter and allow the Board of Supervisors to remove the sheriff for cause. This has been an ongoing issue.
Yeah,
And
this is in San Mateo, just to tell people who are around the world or around the country. This is just south of San Francisco on the peninsula, as it's called. And this is a really, I'd say it's kind of an upscale community. It's a good cross section, really, but kind of maybe upscale community. And the sheriff's been embroiled in this controversy. Doesn't it go back to, a corruption, really, is what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, and the county board of supervisors can't get rid of her. She's digging in her heels and refusing to go. She's saying it's all part of a good old boys network, and she's saying she won't go. And now the voters are like, at this point, at least not all ballots counted. The voters are saying, yeah, no.
Yeah, Matt's got a map
fired.
of San Mateo County.
San Mateo County there, yeah.
Anyway, go ahead. So the sheriff survives. Go ahead.
Sheriff may not survive, actually. The former chief of the Los Angeles Fire Department, not surviving either, won't be returning to that position, surviving work-wise, rather. Kristen Crowley losing her appeal yesterday when the LA City Council voted against her reinstatement as chief. Speaking of fire, though, 2 Oakland fire stations have been saved from the closure list. These are in the Oakland Hills. The Oakland City Council unanimously passing a resolution to keep those fire stations opened. Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors approving restarting a pilot program for homelessness service teams to work out of county public libraries. Begs the question, what are libraries really for, right? The motion by supervisors Hahn and Mitchell suggests the importance of libraries as a place the homeless can go to have access to drinking water, restrooms, and computers, as well as services and support. Vallejo man is charged with stealing thousands of dollars in Legos from Bay Area stores. A Lego thief, Michael Fletcher, accused of making off with roughly $27,000 worth of Legos from stores in Contra Costa and Alameda counties dating back to last summer. The prosecutors say he would walk into the stores alone, fill up a shopping cart with Legos, and then race outside, fleeing into a vehicle parked in a handicapped parking spot. He's now been...
It's a wild idea, but it just might work.
Yeah.
I wonder if they can get him for parking in the handicap spot, too. He's been hit with multiple counts of burglary and grand theft. And last, a man in Orlando is accused of stealing nearly $770,000 worth of jewelry from Tiffany & Co. and then swallowing it.
Wow.
Authorities say
It's a wild idea, but it just might work.
Authorities say Jathan Glider pretended to represent an Orlando Magic player to gain access to a private viewing area. So he gets access to the good stuff and then ate it. He fled the scene, was stopped in Washington County, where he allegedly swallowed some very expensive earrings.
That is a really poorly thought out plan, I think. I don't know. So you have to...
They have to wait for those earrings.
Yeah.
Who wants to buy those? No thanks on those icky earrings.
This is no picnic, no summer camp.
That's right.
I mean,
It
can they
really
ever
isn't.
be,
If you
can
don't
they ever
have
be
the,
cleaned enough? I don't think so.
Would you like these beautiful Tiffany earrings, sir?
No,
I'll tell you what you can do. Walk out of here with them after having swallowed them, and in 2.5 days,
No.
you'll have to do a little bit of subsequent work to clean them up. And that
They
is,
have to watch the
yeah.
jail potty. That's so gross. No.
Yeah. Just give me the truth as discount jewelers. Exactly. It's really,
No.
man.
I'm telling you, there's no amount of cleaning that makes those okay. No.
Yeah. I guess. Wow.
No, thank you. This report is, I don't care if they're the prettiest earrings you ever saw. This report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. It is, we've talked a lot about it. Of course, you've heard Mark swallow his amazing coffee that he is loving.
I have. I swallow it every chance I get. I drink too much coffee, Kim. I got to talk to the doctor about that. If I could get a word in
swallowed it all.
edgewise, you're talking to him all the time. Basically, don't let me get a word into the...
I love the doctors. What can I say? CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. It is good. The coffee, the tea, really good. Worth checking out. honestly, we wouldn't say it if it wasn't true. So CoachellaValleyCoffee.com is the website. If you find something you want and you want to try it, get it into the cart and check out. Please use the code MARKT at checkout, MARKT, no spaces.
10% off.
Exclusive 10% off from the Mark Thompson Show. I'm Kim
exclusive.
McAllister. Yeah, it is.
Right on.
The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yes, thank you, everyone. We're wrapping up around here. If you just joined us, we got into a bit of what President Trump said last night during his speech. It was a speech that was long, record length. It was also full of, I'm just going to say it, lies about everything from Social Security to medicine, to the border, to Ukraine, to money spent on Ukraine. I mean, I don't know where to start and where to stop. It was like this Gatling gun of lies and mistruths. And anyway, but, we're now in that place where the truth becomes tougher to find as public officials who are associated with this administration, I would say, take the kind of normal shading of the truth that is done by all politicians or many politicians oftentimes, and they've now just gone into this other place where you can just say whatever you want, has no moorings whatsoever when it comes to truthfulness. And so that's disturbing. That's a bad place to be, but that's where we are. Calvin Wong, who is the shadow producer of this show, says, Courtney, I have diamond earrings for you on sale. Yeah, thank you for the $10 super chat. No! Courtney is my other half, for those who don't know. And wait a minute, Spencer Jaffe says, I'm getting married. I love the show. Spencer Jaffe's getting married. He is an OG of this show. I love that. I think it's fantastic.
It's fantastic.
It is fantastic. Thank you. I was going to say that.
Congratulations.
Well, we don't know. Yes, congratulations. Best wishes to you. Thank you for a $20 super chat, and we can't wait to hear more about that entire thing. And Kim even put up the celebration banner, which she's loath to do.
The balloons. I got the balloons up. Yeah.
Got the balloons up.
Yeah.
The questions continue, and I will get to them quickly. I'll try to wrap up. Narek by the Sea, who posted this, I think, before the show even went on. In the chat is live before even the show goes on live. The Smithsonian is on the chopping block. Weeks ago, I pulled content off the EPA and NOAA that is now gone. Pick your favorite topic and download, then share it. History and research is being lost. This is a really good point that Narek by the Sea is making, because I'm getting a lot of, what can we do? What can I do to stop it? I don't know. I'll get to what you can do to stop it in a second, but I don't know that that's the only issue. You can do a lot right now. Download that stuff from government websites that's still there, because they are erasing this stuff from government websites. And this is particularly the case with scientific information. So EPA and NOAA, good for you, Narek, for getting some of that onto your computer. There's a movement for people like you and me to download content from federal and Fed-sponsored websites, and they're getting recklessly cleared out. Yeah. So good stuff. I love that you're doing that, and I think it's a good suggestion for the rest of us. And honestly, I hadn't thought of it. Ricky O'Bear says, I'm off making arrangements. Yeah, I think he had a horrible loss in his family. Take care of yourself and others who may be in need. Missing my Mark Thompson Show family. Always feel so very lucky to have you. That's very nice. Ricky O'Bear is another one. OG, participates in so much of what we do. Comments on videos after we've dropped them. Really do appreciate him. D.L. Wong says, while Trump enriches himself legally, let him know 51% did not vote for him, and the percentage will grow wanting him out of office. I think we did share that earlier. Trump selects people with little or no experience to run the government, allowing criminals out of jail, and pretending his policies are helping people, but they're actually destroying the economy while he enriches himself and his cronies. Hi, Chatters, says Katie Lynch, smashed it and gave another thumbs up to Representative Al Green of Texas. A lot of love.
Smashed it with your iron rod.
A lot of love for Al Green. I don't know that I would have remained standing and had to be removed from the chambers. I guess that's where I part company with a lot of people. But Don't yell at the new guy, says Murphy. Don't yell at Matt. Well, I mean, until he's been, I haven't really yelled at him yet.
Not yet.
No, I mean,
we'll ease him into that.
Yeah, we'll get to it. Yeah. We'll get to it. Loved Bernie's rebuttal speech. Yes, so did I. In fact, Meredith, I'd planned to show you some of Bernie's rebuttal speech. We just got behind and I couldn't get to it. But as I did mention, and I have mentioned several times today, and I mentioned all the time, he's one of the great breakthrough speakers who speaks plain language and calls these guys out. And Bernie Sanders is a treasure, and he should, I mean, it's a masterclass in how to do it. He should speak, I think, more, and how he speaks should be emulated by more in the Democratic Party and in the opposition party. Emulated is a ding word. The big rig truck set to increase. Can someone train Matt?
He's doing pretty good.
Yeah, he's doing pretty well. Mega Mars with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Mega Mars. Big rig truck prices are set to increase from $180,000 to $230,000 in May because of tariffs. This will impact inflation big time, says Ron Cook. Wow, from $180,000 to $230,000. Weren't you going to get Jacob a big rig truck for his 13th birthday? I thought.
Yeah, I guess those plans are out the window.
Maybe get a used one, like previously owned, as they call it. Best take from last night's BS speech, says Rich. Trump, quote, I want to do what has not been done in 24 years, balance the federal budget. We're going to balance. Yeah, that is not happening. Trump comparing himself to George Washington was crazy, says Tony S. Yeah, there was that, right? I've done more in my first 5 weeks than any other president except George Washington. I mean, it was a weird, and I'm sure it is not true, 100%. It was just a way to invoke George Washington's name. Every single person, I meant to ask this of the doctor. Of course, I couldn't get a question in because Kim was all over him like a bad smell. Ramona Ortiz says every single person has cancer cells, Mark. It's in our lifestyles, it's in us, and the immune system has to fight these cells. That does appear to be the way it goes, Ramona, which is that we all have them and then at some point they bust through. But there are even earlier manifestations of cancer, of course, in young people, and we've seen it manifests on a timeline that is not uniform, and I think that's where a lot of research is being done. And on health, I bike constantly, put headphones on, and go on night rides. But the weather and time doesn't always allow for that, says the Soulcraft. Yeah, I mean, I wanted to work out yesterday, and I didn't. And when I say work out, I'm barely on that machine. Now, you look at me, and I look like a guy who works out all the time, but I really don't like it. A breath of fresh air. How dare you? A breath of fresh air to hear a doctor able to effectively communicate the medical issues along with the big picture realities. Bringing the light inside the body with Dr. D. That should have been what we call the God, that's so funny and so smart. Our audience is so smart. I'm looking for the light inside the body. Oh, I had it. I used to have it. I don't know where it is now. God, it was one of my favorite drops. What a
kind of a mess over there. What's going on?
Yeah, I don't have it. I was asking if you see the graphic when we bring it up. Many people were seeing black screens. We're on that. Matt's going to be on it. Rich says, I see dead people. Well, that's even something. I don't think we can talk to YouTube about that, but I love it. Have you tried unplugging it and plugging it back in? Yes. My God, that's brilliant. Matt, have you tried unplugging yourself and then plugging yourself back in? Have you tried
I did earlier in the show, actually, so I did.
Okay. There you go. It actually has been tried. I like the black screen, says Harry Magnet. It fits Trump perfectly. Wow, I see what you did. Very, very nice. I really enjoyed the Doc and Kim segment today. Go Kim. Yeah.
Thank you, Luis.
Yeah. I don't know. A little too much Kim for me, but I don't know.
Kim, how are you?
Maybe it's good. I like her to, it's just that I don't know. Whatever. I found the thing that interests her, which is really good. Talk about how we stop them, Mark, says Jennifer West. Social Security, how do we stop it? How about talking about that? How do we stop it? Says Jennifer West. So Jennifer, you may be newer here, and I will also offer this as a limited way to, at least when I say stop it, or you say stop it, I don't know that we can stop it. I think you can, however, and this goes to what do we do? I would absolutely call your legislator. I don't know exactly where you live, but you want to call everybody you can who represents you, and even call those who do not, because other legislators who aren't necessarily representative of your district or your state, they're also responsive to calls and emails that come in. Now, as I mentioned the other day, you may not have been here, Democrats are outpaced by Republicans on calls into Congress by anybody? Anybody remember what the figure is? It's 8-1. So Republicans call into Congress, senators and House members, by 8-1 over Democrats. So Democrats, you care so much about Social Security, you care so much about government spending, you care about USAID, you care about the EPA, the IRS, etc. Call. And Knowing Marie has this 5calls.org that I didn't know about. That's what you're seeing. Or you're seeing a black screen. I don't know. But we have it up. 5 calls, the number 5, and then the word calls. 5calls.org. Go there. You'll see a bunch of different topics, some of which may, in your case, Jennifer West, who was so nice to participate in our chat, they may land with you. And you might say, yeah, Social Security, that's the reason I'm calling. Okay, they give you a script, and you can ad-lib around it or whatever, but they give you the kinds of things. It has to be concise. You don't want to go on like you're calling a talk radio show. You want to make it concise, and you also want to call, and they give you the numbers for your representatives there. So again, that's the number 5, 5calls.org. So if you want to do something and you want to hear about how to stop them, that's a way to at least make your voice heard. The minority party right now, the Democrats, otherwise are pretty limited in terms of what they can actually do. So I'd love to stay here longer, but Kim is forcing me out. I know it's a very...
What?
I know, I don't want to say it, but it is... All right.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I mean, Matt and I can stay, but Kim is insistent. She has the after party live. That's her show. And she wants to get over there.
We'll do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
Yeah, all right. West Theory, one of our supreme supporters, with a $5 super sticker. If you like anything that you heard today, or if you dislike everything that you heard today, but you feel that more has to be heard from this show, thank you for supporting it. Please consider being one of our Patreon or PayPal supporters. You can find both those links under all our videos. Definitely, if you're a Patreon supporter, you're joining that community, go through the web. Don't go through the Patreon app, because Apple yanks 30% of the money from us, so it doesn't get to us. Shadow will take us out. Kim will join, and tomorrow, David Katz.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Big guest this week. Appreciate everyone. We're out of time.
Bye-bye.
We're out of time. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, everyone. Until tomorrow. Bye-bye.